one of the other things that people should be thinking about when you introduce an as an existential threat like that, like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have some enemies that were enemies realize they have to team up with one another. So you're going to see some very unusual pairings and alliances.
Hi, David. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I really enjoyed season 2 of Foundation. And we're going to talk about the finale. This will run after it airs, so we can just get right into that.
Right.
The reveal of how Gail saved Harry was nothing short of epic. And I just need to know, was it as exhausting for Jared Harris as it looked?
Yeah. And we filmed that over the course of like 4 different days. And I'm so glad that because I've seen online various people theorizing as to how he survived and Salvor's going to save him or he's a robot for a variety of reasons, which we can't entirely reveal right now. Him being a robot just didn't work for us, although it was something we thought of. And I just thought this was kind of a much more interesting in canon way for him to have survived that when you look back on these episodes, it makes a lot of sense. And I feel like we played fair. If you look at episode 6, when Tellum is giving Gail a sort of primer on how this all works, everything that she says is what then Gail goes on to do.
I love that.
And I just thought that was really neat. And one of the things that I will say, I'm not sure people that have seen the ending, I'm not sure they completely took this away, is that Gail and Harry, their minds connected. Madison, can you? Sorry. Their minds connected. So Gail had an insight. She says, like I saw Yana, I saw that. So what we're saying there is that Gail actually, that the flashback that we showed in episode 6, like Gail actually experienced all of that. So they have this empathic connection now that is quite deep, that is going to bear more fruit in future seasons. As with a lot of things we do, there's more than meets the eye on the surface of that. They've kind of had this little mind meld.
That is fascinating. And I do love how we've seen Gail really come into her own this season, especially because it felt early on like she's really doing a lot of things to save Salvor. And now, like, as opposed to like really thinking about the bigger picture. And now saving Salvor is not possible, but that leads to like, there's only the bigger picture and what this means for that. Can you talk about that balance in this series between like these personal relationships that are so important to every character, and yet like, whatever you want to call it, destiny or fate or psychohistory that we are up against, that really is what everyone is fighting for, that they may not get to see the result of.
It's also interesting when you're stewarding a show like this. I saw some people in the middle of the season frustrated with Gail, like, why isn't she more suspicious, or why isn't she more that? And obviously with episode 10, we reveal she was. She had a plan. She was working with Harry. And I think that's part of the fun, and something that you just have to suffer through sometimes as a showrunner is say, I know where this is going and you don't. And hopefully when we reveal where it's going, you'll go, oh, I understand now. And that's more surprising. But it's also important that you've got what characters want to do personally, and then what characters need to do for society, and then what characters should do for the plot, right? And you have to balance all of those things. And sometimes it makes the most sense that a character should do X for the plot. But hopefully, a show is really sort of, cooking on all cylinders when you've delineated a character that's clear enough that you realize, even though this is what they should do for the plot, they're going to do something else because it's right for the character. Because in reality, human beings do things against their own self-interest all the time. And I think that's exciting when you get to that point. And so I think Salvor was tripping up Gail, and that's not why we killed the character Salvor, because I love the character Salvor and I love Leah Harvey. But we also thought her death's really meaningful because it means that future isn't written in stone. and more than that, now that her daughter has died, saving her, it means Gail can't back out anymore. I mean, if for to honor her daughter's memory, she's going to have to do this. She has to take on that burden.
And I love that it parallels too with Harry honoring his wife's memory. It's like even the like king of psychohistory still has his personal connection that he's.
Yeah, we have to do this, and I love that moment, which is a very human moment with him on the rocks between the two of them. Is, you know, I imagine people put in that situation. There are many times when they would want to give up, but you think, if my loved one sacrifice their lives for me or for this, then it's our duty to continue.
So on the non-human side of things, I think that Demerzel is like maybe the most fascinating and complex character at this moment, just with all the history that you guys have added on to her story. Was that all mapped out for you from the beginning? And how do you discuss amongst yourselves, I guess, what are her true feelings toward Empire and how she's going to have to change things up if she wants to, you know, keep it going?
A lot of the big moves of Demerzel were mapped out by me from the beginning. So I knew in season 1 that we were going to tell that story near the end of season 2. And so when she ripped her face off at the end of season 1, after killing, a lot of people assumed it was because of the cognitive dissonance that she was experiencing for killing Dawn. And that was certainly the case. But now you understand there's a lot more to it than that. And I like, that's what's critical to me when we do a flashback is not just that we're filling in little exposition, but that allows you to recontextualize things that you've seen before. And so, or like a really interesting exercise for the audience would be, now that they've seen 209, is to go back and watch, in particular, the 3rd episode from season 1, where we saw her play on the first, and how does that change their view, and watch that moment when she rips her face off. I mean, Demerzel is a really complex character. And if the show goes on, we have not told all of her story. There's at least 2 or 3 more pretty big flashbacks that we intend to show that will go progressively further and further back in time. And, you know, if the show goes on long enough, we'll go all the way back to Earth.
Wow.
18,000 years ago.
Yeah. Now, speaking of, you know, flashbacks and gaps in stories, I guess we have another time jump at the end of this season. And I don't know, I don't know what the lifespans are like, because I was like, Polly made it for a while. But other people, not necessarily. So you have these like kind of endings for characters that I really love. For example, like Brother Constant getting to find Terminus, and then, or, what's left of Terminus, the Foundation. And now they can still continue to build that up. Or Sereth and Dawn getting to like fix the ending of Dawn from season 1. Yes, he actually does get to run away with his loved one this time. So are we going to get to hear what happens after, when we get to 150 years in the future? Or is that just like to the imagination?
I mean, some of the characters is going to be left to the imagination, but some of the characters, there are threads, dangling chads, the unborn child of Dawn and Sereth. Certainly the intention, again, I don't have a crystal ball or prime radiant. I have enough story to tell 8 seasons worth, but if we get at least 6 seasons in, that the hanging, dangling thread of that child will loop back around into this story. Certainly that is the plan. It is not over.
Wonderful. And then finally we got our first, real look at the Mule in the future. What can you tell me about your take on the Mule?
To expect the unexpected, as is usual. If you've read the books, there are still some surprises to be had. But I really like that last scene because it's the polar opposite of how that character has been depicted in the few glimpses that we've seen of him. He's depicted as this bigger than life boogeyman, this Darth Vader character. And now suddenly he's vulnerable and he's crying and he seems as frightened of Gail as she is of him. And I mean, look, the Mule is one of Asimov's great characters, and so many people that came before me everyone wanted to jump to the Mule, and I always felt we had to earn the Mule. But now with season 3, we get to do the Mule, and I'm really excited about that. The most exciting aspect of the Mule for me is that all bets are off once he enters the story, and whether it's psychohistory, whether it's Empire, it's just truly anything can happen now because he's that much of a black swan. And I think one of the other things that people should be thinking about when you introduce an as an existential threat like that, like the White Walkers in Game of Thrones, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have some enemies that were enemies realize they have to team up with one another. So you're going to see some very unusual pairings and alliances in season 3.
Ooh, very exciting. Thank you so much. I just have to say one final thing. Hober Mallow, iconic. So sad. Bring him back. Come back to life. Okay.
Yeah, he was awesome. He was awesome.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.